right, so welcome to another episode of It's More Than Just Physical, where we focus on mental health as well as we're going to talk about a little bit of current events. Today, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kristen. I am an educator, and I'm here to be on my fitness journey for the revolution and be stronger.
She's an educator, and she's here to educate. So we just got done with our workout. How do you feel?
I feel tired, but for a good reason. Empowered. I feel like I'm getting stronger. My strength is increasing.
That's good. And she is. She's getting better every day, and I enjoy seeing that. Like, I enjoy seeing the progress, and you are definitely progressing.
Appreciate it.
Okay, it's getting a little too. All right. How have you been coping, like, during the COVID-19? Just because you're a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not necessarily physically around your students. How have you able to cope with that? The Zoom calls and things of that nature. How are you handling it?
I would say working out is definitely one of the ways I'm coping. When I get frustrated, and I notice when I haven't worked out, I become more frustrated easier. Coping with online learning is hard because it goes against my educational philosophy. Learning is social, so it's hard to teach kids how to learn if they're not being social. I just feel like I channel that energy into trying to find new ways to connect them and connect myself to them.
So dive into that philosophy. What do you mean learning is social?
Learning is like the same way we work out. So how it's if I was to watch a video on a move and I was to watch a video on you doing a certain exercise, yeah, I would be able to mimic it, but until I actually see you do it with my own eyes in person and have you correct me in live form, that knowledge isn't concrete until I actually get to practice it and show you that I can do it. So when people in general, not even just students, are learning, there needs to be a practice and teaching factor in it. And when you are behind a screen, it's hard to tell what they actually internalize and what they can do. So that's been my struggle, coping with it in many different ways, but the most effective way is working out for sure.
Now, are there any other ways that you've been coping with this pandemic, you can call it?
Reaching out to loved ones and doing things that make me smile and help me feel better about the world around me. I would say in terms of those things, writing, playing the saxophone, laughing, organizing, protests and demonstrations to kind of release my anger in a productive way. And probably some unhealthy ways of coping. You know what I'm saying? I get upset.
I get it.
Chips with cheese always makes everybody feel better.
What about, so you teach young children, right?
Yeah.
Do you notice, like I work in a school, and do you notice kids that clearly go through things, how they act? Now, relate that to yourself. When it comes to childhood and childhood traumas, are you able to cope with today how you were in those experiences when you were younger? Are you able to kind of see how they shaped you into who you are today?
That's a good question. Specifically speaking to childhood trauma, I think personally the childhood trauma that I didn't even realize I experienced or internalized has definitely been shining light or has shown through in this time. For example, being the only child and having a trauma response of my father working overtime, right? So I was by myself for a while, and being able to fend for myself and having a trauma response. Okay, well, if I get a phone call from him, I'm nervous now because I know that I'm by myself, I'm an only child, and he's working, so I don't know if this is a phone call for him to just check on me or a phone call for him to be like, okay, this happened, I need you to come here, I need you to go over your auntie house, you know what I'm saying, things like that. So I think when those childhood traumas present themselves in the times now, when I'm organizing and outside and setting up demonstrations or protesting, when someone calls me or my family calls me, it's like, okay, now what? Like, I think I'm on edge, especially in times like this when who knows what's gonna happen. When I get phone calls, it's kind of like a nerve-wracking thing to be like, okay, I want to speak to you, but is this an emergency? It's almost like there needs to be a button on the phone, like, I'm calling you for emergency or I'm calling you just for leisure type thing. I think my anxiety is heightened when it comes to that, especially during times like these.
Do you go to physical? Do you go see a counselor or therapist?
Not now.
Do you believe in therapy?
I absolutely do. I believe in therapy in all of its forms. I don't think that therapy is just a person talking to you and helping you talk through your feelings. I think therapy is anything that helps you cope with the things that you're feeling inside, and therapy
could be you playing the saxophone.
It is. That is my therapy. That's a part of my therapy. That, working out, laughing, everything. I wouldn't say everything is therapy, but I feel like a lot of things can be in the form of therapy. Things that make your heart smile, to me, are therapy. That make you feel good.
That's great. Okay. So we talked about, you mentioned protesting before. How has, because you've been organizing a lot of meetups, right? A lot of the gatherings. How has that impacted your mental health? And seeing all of this stuff, like there is no getting away from what's happening today with police brutality and the inequality of us, of black people, black men and women, the men and women that's been murdered by police. How are you dealing with that?
Good question. I think dealing with the mental health aspect of organizing and protesting is a untalked about and untapped topic, because while organizing and collaborating with different groups around the city that have the same goals and missions, while that is fulfilling and it does a little justice to the passion that I'm feeling, it's also a triggering thing to constantly face the oppressors in that light, right? So knowing that they are aggressive and they antagonize protesters, but still going out there knowing that may very well happen, has been a triggering thing for sure. I think mentally it's bittersweet. It's like, okay, I know that this needs to be done. I know people need to hear this information. I know we need to show unity. I know we need to come together. But I also know that coming together and exposing the knowledge that all of us should know puts my people and black people in a vulnerable spot, which also gives me anxiety about being in a protest, not knowing that the news is gonna show up, and then my face being plastered all over the news, and my family like, be safe. Like, they out here documenting, and having a father who works kind of in a juvenile detention center realm, and knowing that he's had experience of combing through footage, finding people, and then to realize that I may very well be one of those people that get found in that footage is a half empty, half full feeling.
And I ask you that because I think about today, right? I don't want to say we don't have any black leaders, but we don't have that Malcolm X. And I was thinking in the terms of like, how draining was it for Martin Luther King and Malcolm X to do this, not for a day, not for a few months, but for years. And they were murdered because of this. So that's why I asked, how are you coping with it mentally? Because I can only imagine what they were coping with mentally and how they responded to the drainage, really, the mental, emotional, the physical drainage of not just witnessing the news, but never being able to run away from it.
Never.
You turn on your phone, you go on Instagram, it's there. So my next question is, with the organizing, with educating the people, what's next? What's our next step?
I keep saying that's a great question, but they're really good questions. They're really good questions.
No, it's a conversation.
I think, I was gonna say before you asked that, like, it's important to note that like everybody's role in the revolution is not permanent, right? So I may be protesting now and be very vocal about the passion and the anger that I have inside of me until that drains me, right? And then Black health and Black mental health is revolutionary because they want us to drain ourselves, right? We're supposed to be tired. We're supposed to work until we can't work anymore. We're supposed to pass on this mindset of work until you're tired or you haven't worked hard enough, right? And I think that it's important to know that the revolution has many roles, and if protesting and organizing is draining me to the point where I can't mentally, cope myself without having external coping factors, if I can't cope internally, then that means that my role as a protester and as an organizer is anti-revolutionary, because it's stopping me from being my best self to help people. And what's next is really figuring out where everybody's role is and what works best for people. So as an educator, I know that I'm advocating for children, and I'm advocating for the best resources and ways to educate children. And if I know that that's my niche and that's my passion, and I've become drained from protesting and organizing, then I can put my efforts into that. And I think it's important for everybody to find their role in the revolution, and that may not be what it was when they started, right? So some people are really good at passing information about petitions and getting people to sign up and donate to things, and some people are really good at making phone calls to businesses and having them participate. Some people like to be on the front line. Some people like to just volunteer and be there and to help in any way they can. And I think it's important that that's fluid. Like, we understand that it's a continuum, and not, oh, you did this protest one time, so you got to do all of them. And it's like, no.
Yeah. And that answered my next question, which is going to be, what are different roles that people could play in a part of in a protest? But
and roles, really, we all have the roles that we should, but our role, we were talking earlier, my role could simply be checking my family's perspective. Like, your role is multifunctional, right? So your one role that you're doing doesn't just hit one audience. I'm gonna leave that there.
So you said that your role could be checking your family's perspective. I want to ask this question. Whose job is it to check the opposition's perspective? Now, and I ask that because remember back in the day, and I feel like we don't do this anymore. Back in the day, Malcolm X or James Baldwin, this is one of my favorite speeches he's ever given. James Baldwin debated with William, I don't remember his name, but if you type in YouTube James Baldwin speech, then it'll pop up. He basically spoke about how Black people basically created America. There is no America without Black people. And the Black or the American dream does not exist without Black people. That was his argument. And on the other side, he faced a conservative who he was, I would say, James Baldwin was educating, but he had a totally different view. Whose job is it to educate those people? Because I'm not having that conversation with him, simply because I don't feel like when we have these conversations with the opposition that I can't change his mind. The same way he's not gonna change my mind. So I feel like if we have those conversations, we're having those conversations for the people that are in the middle, right? So whose job is it to have that conversation with them?
And that's a good, man, I think that's a hot topic right now, especially with our people our age and our generation having so many diverse friend groups, right? So
exactly.
It's almost like, damn, are we responsible for educating our peers and our friends and the people who don't understand, or should we just keep living in our truth and doing the things that we know to be just and they learn from experience, which is the same thing I'm talking about. We're learning is social, right? So the people, it's not enough for us to educate the opposite side or our oppressors. We shouldn't have to, because this is our experience and we're living it. And until what's happening now, until they live our experience, they won't understand it. We can preach to them, we can tell them, we have been telling them for so many years, we've been showing them, educating them, offering revisions of history books. We've been writing books. We've been giving speeches. We've been doing all this information disseminating, right? And until they actually live the hardship and the experience, they won't understand and learn it. And I think that's what's happening now. It's becoming very personal and very in their face, as opposed to remote learning where I'm teaching you something through a computer, right? That's the same as me talking to a white oppressor or a believer of white supremacy and being like, hey, don't do this because that's bad. But until they see how bad it is and feel how bad it is, they won't learn it. They won't learn it or care about it.
How do you feel with companies now expressing their interest in Black Lives Matter? I would say, I believe that all of it is for financial gain. You look at the leadership boards and you don't see any, or you see one light-skinned person.
Man,
and he's not CEO, he's not even a president. He's like executive vice president of foreign, I don't know.
See, and I think that's a loaded question, and I have a loaded answer.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
I am not for, especially big name companies like Reebok. I'm not even trying to single out any company, but big name companies that benefit off the Black dollar and benefit off Black culture, I think are playing a safe role. They are in it for financial gain. It's all a capitalistic mindset, because white comfort is what makes this world go round, right? So these companies are only expressing their solidarity with Black Lives Matter through a post or saying that their employees can wear pins that support it, because they're more focused on keeping white people comfortable in this subject and keeping white people their sense of fear lowered, right? So they don't want people to be alarmed and think that their company is solely standing for this issue that makes white people so uncomfortable, because being Black makes them so uncomfortable. Having Black power and having a Black dollar makes them uncomfortable, and that Black dollar being threatened is what has a lot of these companies expressing solidarity. But true solidarity is using your power and influencing your capitalistic influence and connections to actually give us what we're asking for. So, right, Apple Music did a whole series or day where they suspended all regular music and we had to listen to Black music. Wow, that was amazing, you know, and very inspiring, because I was on the playlist all day. I cannot lie to you.
It was dope.
It was dope. And it's also like Apple Music, Reebok, Starbucks, all of these corporations have so much money and so much influence that their simple action, their one action, could change the trajectory of how this movement is going. So if Reebok decided they really stood in solidarity with us, then they could use their money and influence to get the people for Breonna Taylor's murder arrested. They could use their influence to really make a statement to all the people who are debilitated by white fear. Like, I think there's so much to be said about organizations and corporations that have 90% of their success come from Black dollars, but only have one Black employee or CEO executive on their team. There's a lot to be said about those corporations that claim to be for us, that we pour so much money into, that don't actually want to see us get what we're asking for. They just want to make money off our pain, which has been happening for hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. How do you feel as though celebrities should speak up on this? So, and I say that because, let's take rap, for example. You can tell me about where you bought your chain from. You can tell me about the car. You can yell out Gucci. But now it's time to educate the people on different things. Do you feel as though it's their responsibility to now speak on these things?
You know, that's a good question, because it makes me think about the earlier question about our role in the revolution, right? Like what everyone's role is. And now I'm thinking like I think that as Black people, unfortunately, we've had to always take on multiple roles, right? So the intersectionality of being a Black professional, of being, you know, respectability that has been engraved in us and socialized in Black people from when we were younger, I think that leads to us having multiple roles. And I think rappers specifically and celebrities specifically are kind of catapulted into this multiple role thing. It's not enough for you to just be a rapper and rap about what's going on. It's not enough for you to be a singer and mention Black Lives Matters in your song. It's not enough for you to take $1 million of the $10 million that you have and try to, you know, create change in the way that you see fit. I think that we all have to have multiple roles, and celebrities, especially because they're in the spotlight, have a disadvantage of those roles. They don't have as many roles to choose from as we do, right? So as normal folk, not being famous, you might be famous, but normal folk, we have to, you know, really choose the roles we can choose freely, right? We can choose one day, okay, I want to go to a protest and I want to organize one and really socially disrupt something. And other days, you're like, okay, I'm just going to donate. But celebrities often can't do all those things. And I think it's important for Black celebrities, especially, to understand that their influence will be nothing without Black people. So it will be in their best interest to advocate and really help our liberation as a people more than it would benefit them to stay silent. I think celebrities have a hard and warranted job of getting the world's attention because they already have it. And it's like using that attention. So you have the world's attention, use that attention to get us what we deserve and are asking for, not a damn, sorry, I didn't mean to curse, but not a painting of Black Lives Matters on the ground, you know, like that.
It's not enough.
It's not even what we wanted. No one asked for that.
Now, my final question for right now, that I can think of right now, is how do we get our Black Wall Street back? How do we get back to that? Now, I've always thought we can get there because we do have Black billionaires. We do have Black multi-millionaires. And I didn't ask how come they can't. But I don't want to put all that pressure. I feel like it is a bit unfair to put all of that pressure on a select number of celebrities. How do us, the common people, the regular person, how do we get back to that status and independence and circulate that Black dollar? Where do we start?
Man, that's
the golden question.
That's the golden question, but it's like there's the answer is honestly in
and I know and understand that there shouldn't be one answer. There isn't a starting point. There isn't an actual, right? There's not an actual starting point that we're going to have of, oh, well, it's schools or it's job. Like, I know that it's, you know, it has many faces, it carries many faces.
Right.
But where do you think we can start that would be effective for change?
And I'm actually in a class that's talking about this, with the concept that you're hinting at is like a shared vision, right? So that we all have this common goal, and no matter what direction or what influence us as Black people have, we know the end goal, we know what we want, and that we don't have a shared vision right now. So answering that question is kind of like, well, you could ask a team of professionals and they would say that the key to getting Black Wall Street up is, you know, divesting in white corporations and divesting from places that don't have Black politics. And then you could talk to a group of young people or millennials, and they're like, well, to get Black Wall Street up, we need more Black businesses, we need better support for Black businesses, right? But then you talk to 60-year-old generation, and they're like, well, we need to establish our own nation. We need to establish our own being as a people, because when you think about it, Black Wall Street was just the tip of a much bigger iceberg that needs to emerge. I think, and that tip got kind of chipped off because it wasn't strong in the foundation. And I think it was easy to dismantle Black Wall Street because Black people realized that although we have our own Black businesses, these Black businesses are rented in Jewish towns that own these whole buildings, right? These Black businesses, you're paying mortgage or rent to a slumlord or building owner that doesn't have Black politics. And you have Black billionaires that don't have Black politics, and their billions of dollars came from Black labor, came from exploiting Black hardship. So I think to get to a point where we have a shared vision and understand what Black economic freedom looks like, and Black sustainable wealth looks like, I think we need to understand that although we have an end, everybody's means to an end won't be effective. They talk about like the effect of having a big arrow and so many little arrows inside that arrow trying to go. You have one arrow trying to go up, you got another one going on a slant, but when the goal is really this way, everybody's energies can't counteract what the main goal is. And I think when we come together and understand what our vision is and what we want to create together and are solid on that, Black people are magical, so it's gonna happen. But until then, I think there's some people who are still in the guise of respectability, right? There's some people who still have our parents' values of wanting to get a good job, being able to live comfortably with a house and have a family, right? And that's not enough anymore, especially for Black people. That's not enough, and there are people still stuck in that trance of the American dream. Even if it's a nice American dream, right? Everybody wants to be comfortable, but if your American dream comes at the expense of you putting another Black life down, and you condemning another person's way of life, or you condemning another person's way of income, then do you really have a common goal? Do we really have a shared vision if you can't accept the fact that this guy is selling dope because that's what he got to do, and you know, telling him to go get a job and go get an education is really perpetuating the respectability cloud that has plagued us for so long. I could keep going, but I'm gonna leave it there.
Hey, I'm sitting here, I'm like, hey, somebody gonna learn something today. So my final question is this. I know the answer. Do you feel responsible for what's going on? Now, due to your actions, I know the answer, of course. And I ask this question because with both of us working at a school, when I see that little Black boy and he's angry because of things that happen at home, I feel responsible to show him that there's a different side, right? So we talk a lot about, I work at a school in the projects, in the hood. So these kids don't get to live a normal life, right? They grow up really quick. So I had a student, for example, who, someone very close to him passed away due to gun violence. He came to school the very next day. And he was ditching school. He was in 4th grade. He was ditching school. So my job was to kind of build relationships to make sure that these kids come to school. And I then felt a responsibility to show him, like, hey, it's okay to cry. Like, I remember him sitting in class with his head down. He was just mad. He was angry. So I was like, hey, come in the hallway. Like, what's wrong? Like, you haven't been yourself. Like, he was always smiling. He was always laughing. Like, I felt responsible to have to let him know that it was okay to let his emotions out. It was okay to, like, not be okay. It was okay to feel bad. It's okay to go downstairs and go talk to the counselor. Like, I feel a responsibility. I feel responsible. Like, it's my fault if I do nothing. Do you feel that same responsibility? And it doesn't have to be just with your kids. It's in general, with us.
Yes. And that's as simple. Yes, I think we all are we have a responsibility to ourselves, right? So I think, in my interpretation of your experience with that student, it wasn't so much you being responsible for his life, it's you're being responsible. You feel responsible because you know that in some way, shape, or form, that's something you needed or would have change the trajectory of your life, or people you
Right.
know, or people you know when you knew when you were younger, that would have changed. So that responsibility doesn't really come from, oh, they're gonna. I think responsibility in the way we're used to hearing about it is taking ownership or being accountable for it. And I think that you're holding yourself accountable by holding him accountable, and he's holding you accountable
Right.
for the things that the influence and the knowledge that you have over him. I think we are responsible, and one of the things that I've been grappling with is the responsibility of the public when things like the blatant and very publicized murder of George Floyd happened. I think as a public, we are responsible for sticking up for ourselves and our people.
And that's cut you off.
Always.
But this. I guess this isn't my last question because I talked to my friend about this. Right? It was a group chat of us, all black men, and it was, what would you do if that was me?
Bruh.
Right? What would you do if that was me? There's cops there. Are you going to stand in front? Are you going to physically remove that officer off of him after I've said that I can't breathe? That's what I talk about when I talk about responsibility. Like, if I see that video, I'm like, damn, there's so many black people there, and everybody watched. Like, who felt the responsibility to say, he's not about to die? You know, like, that's what I'm talking about when I mention, like, responsibility. Do you feel the need to, like, take ownership in making that move, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely, and I haven't been able to name it for a long time, but I coming here or going anywhere, if I see a police officer and they've pulled over a black person, I many times have pulled over too, just sit there, right? Like I'm watching, I'm looking, and it's difficult because responsibility takes different forms for different people. So some people feel responsible and feel that they're doing justice to the situation by recording it. They're being responsible because they're getting the information out of there, right? Which goes back to the many different roles that we have. Somebody does need to record it, right? We need that person that's there and de-escalated, but we also need that person that steps in. We need that person that's not afraid to stand up to the fear that cripples us, because those black people, and to play devil's advocate, I do think that they should have intervened, but those black people are crippled by the fear of, like, we know that cops want to kill us, right? We know that we can be deemed aggressive by the smallest things that we do. So in that situation, being faced with a blatant disrespect and disregard for black life, and then also having a plethora of people come and watch something, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to be on the ground too, you know. I don't want to put my life in jeopardy, but I think that's what we need to understand. It's that time for us to release that fear of our livelihoods and our reputations being broken in order for freedom, in order for the revolution, you know.
That was the last question. That was great. I enjoyed this interview.
I appreciate it. That's a great question.
I'm definitely gonna chop it into pieces.
We said
I'll probably put a YouTube link in there too. I'm gonna just upload the whole video because it was way too much for me to kind of break up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. Thank you.